issued the Steel Scrap Recycling Policy. The policy framework provides standard guidelines for collection, dismantling and shredding activities in an organized, safe and environmentally sound manner. It also promotes 6 Rs, principles of reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, redesign and remanufacture through scientific handling, processing and disposal of all types of recyclable scraps, including non-ferrous scraps through authorized centers. The main sources of steel scrap are automobiles, construction and shipbreaking. Steel Ministry's endeavour is to develop a globally competitive steel industry by adopting state-of-the-art environment-friendly technologies. And to get deeper insights on the topic, we're joined by Mr. Jagdish Khattar, auto expert, Mr. Surendranath Tripathi, Director, IIPA, and Mr. Arun Malhotra, former MD, Nissan, India. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, all of you. Mr. Tripathi, let me come to you first. Take us through the salient features of the steel scrap recycling policy issued by the government.
As you have just mentioned in your initial remark, the Ministry of Steel has come with the steel scrap policy. The good thing is that it has come along with the intention that MORTH and Ministry of Heavy Industry will also come with a complementary policy so that steel scrap policy becomes a reality. The steel users, especially the auto and other sector, they also have to understand the advantage of this policy, because this is, according to me, another Swachhata Abhiyan. We are going to use the scrap of vehicles and many other ferrous materials which are available in the market for reuse, recycle, so that import burden of scrap is reduced, recycle material is used, and the policy of auto and end of life and many other thought process that were there in the market which are being considered by the government, they also will be given a shape through this policy. This policy advantages, as I see, is that this will create a demand for auto on the one hand. Second thing, it will also clean the scrap which is available here and there, and perhaps reduce the import of scrap steel and therefore add towards foreign exchange. And the policy for the first time also has an implementation mechanism that how the scrap will be collected, what is the role of producers, end use of that thing, so that they can also consider a policy that suppose I deposit 10 kg of this, that value could be reduced in when I am going to buy a new auto from that company. So there are incentive galore for all the users as well as waste managers, and might create even job opportunity for the micro, small and medium sector. So I not only welcome it, it's a good policy which everybody should try to understand and appreciate this.
And the big takeaway from you, of course, is that this is Swachhata Abhiyan 2.0. Mr. Khattar, coming to you. How will this policy promote circular economy in the steel sector?
See, one part is the circular economy that you are talking about. Second is, let me go to the basics of this policy that has come. It's come too late and still half-hearted. It was in 2004-5, if I remember correctly, or 5-6, when Mr. Chidambaram was the finance minister, that we discussed about this policy of scrapping old cars and bringing them, because old cars create more problems of pollution and all other things, safety, all other things are there, and we were very gung-ho about it. We have taken 15 years and this is what has happened. Even today it seems to be voluntary. Indians customers are not going to leave their car till it is to be dumped. But scrapping policy and all is connected with the technology of the cars, as far as fuel consumption is concerned, as far as emission is concerned. So, sorry, I'm still going back to the basics.
Yes, sir.
So, I am not very sure that this seems to be voluntary. This is voluntary. To what extent it will succeed remains to be seen. So, government and the agencies will have to do a lot of spade work to make people agree to it. And this will involve a lot of incentives. The government, I'm not very sure how it's going to, but I'm sure that, but I must give credit to the government that at least they have been able to bring a policy. So that's the first step, and maybe after some experience they can keep change it and upgrade it.
So finally, after this long journey, the policy has been notified by the government. Coming to you, Mr. Malhotra, sir mentioned about incentives. Now, this policy says that Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and also Department of Heavy Industries will come up with a policy on extended producers' responsibility, ensuring that vehicle manufacturers provide incentives for scrapping. What would this mean for your sector?
See, there are two things. As Mr. Khattar mentioned, this has been discussed for a long time. Two things which will emerge is, in India, our biggest problem is a lot of vehicles, especially commercial vehicles, not even passenger vehicles, are 15 years old. They are 9 lakh vehicles. And they don't have any norms. They are probably the Euro 1 norms. And even the way they are managed and the way they are maintained is in a very poor shape. So clearly, there is a need to change this entire thing. I think it may not be mandatory, but there are two things which are working. And this is what I understand from the draft policy which is being circulated among the industry. One is there is some incentive given to the person whose vehicle is scrapped. So he can go to that location and get a certain value for it. Second, which will happen is what the government is simultaneously thinking is that when vehicles cross the threshold period of 15 years, then they come for registration. The registration charges will be very high. So this incentive and disincentive will probably nudge and push the customers or the fleet owners towards this. Clearly feel auto industry is passing through one of the worst slumps, and clearly there is an opportunity to enhance the market. So there is an opportunity clearly. But having said that, since this policy still the contours are not very clear as far as auto is concerned, and you don't only have the center in it, you have the states in it. Because we are talking of 3 types of incentives. One is the manufacturer gives,
yes,
which is like a tradable bond. You can say once you scrap it, you get a certificate. But the second part is the government's responsibility is also that when you reuse that for buying another vehicle, you get some reduction in registration or road tax. So when you combine this, it will be beneficial. But we have a federal structure and the state governments are and road tax registration beyond it. So we need to combine it. I think the note is circulated among all stakeholders, but I still feel it's a welcome step being discussed for a long time. There will be challenges, but it's a very step forward and it will see the light of the day very fast.
You're making a very important point, and let me take that to Mr. Tripathi. How do we get all the states on board for effective implementation of this policy?
The scrap policy was supposed to be announced by the Government of India. Nevertheless, it is in the public domain now. Time one can perhaps appreciate, as Sir was telling, that it could have been earlier. Many things could have been earlier, but nevertheless they are today. One. Two, the scrap policy that has been designed, it has taken into account the motor vehicle and many other heavy steel end user industries. So this industry and requirement of waste, I don't think any state will oppose that waste should be allowed to continue as waste, and they have no interest in cleaning the waste and clearing the waste. So states will be on board, and certainly these policies take into account when they go through a comprehensive, extended consultative process. When GOI announces any policy, it goes through all those pains and takes into account the various stakeholders. I am sure that they must have taken a state and other relevant stakeholder on board. So I cannot conclude by policy that because this policy is there, it may or may not have been. There is no reason for me to speculate that the states and other stakeholders are not on board. One. Two, the incentive structure, the end user responsibility of the producers, and the policy has been done in such a manner that it will help all the stakeholders. The producer will get new additional raw material. We will use the waste for the wealth. Waste to wealth policy will come. The waste which is creating dump yard and occupying useful space in urban areas will become free. So there are various other advantages of removing waste and converting to wealth. That is as far as the social and other impact is concerned. But yes, the auto industry seem to be a very visible option here because we are suffering in some respect in auto sector. So this appears to be a very good incentive for the auto industry. But raw material, steel is a raw material which we have to use it judiciously. So this will also reduce the use of basic raw material and use the reusable and recyclable material. So it will also add to the natural wealth of the country. So I see no point in all benefits all around, and I do not find any merit that. Nevertheless, it is too late, but it is not too soon also.
It's never too late, but of course you said that waste to wealth would be a welcome idea. But Mr. Khattar, setting up so many scrap yards would be a challenge?
Of course. Listen, sorry, I'm seem to be out of step with others. Yes, it was required. It is very important. It should have come much earlier. Better late than never. But let's face it, this is not going to be easy to implement. You know, in theory it looks good, But our people have such love for their vehicles that they will continue till even one tire remains out of the 4. So, if there is an element of voluntary, is going to be difficult. Yes, they will come with incentives, disincentives, all sorts of things. I mean, why not go straight forward and say that after this you have to go, this vehicle has to go, and then sort it out. I mean, we are carrying a burden of so many years with us, we need to clean it up. So, the point I am really making is that it is very much required, but you know, I have an experience in India. When we have some tough things to do, we start in a small way and then gradually learn with experience and upgrade and improve. So, bottom line is, it's an initiative which has come now, better late than never. I don't think, as they are saying, that there is a shortage of this thing and we will have scrapping and it will increase the market. I don't think it, for another few years, you will see any result of this. A lot of work will have to be done, a lot of alteration will have to be done in the policy, a lot of learning will have to be done. Scrap yards are, you know, we studied that when we prepared a brief for the government. The manner in which the scrap yards and all policy which are undertaken abroad, this is only a paper policy that we have done. Implementation, agencies to be done, viability of those agencies, there are so many other things that will take place. So, I only hope that the government will set up a group of people from various agencies who may be involved in decision making and implementation, because let's face it, it's very important for us and we need to get a consolidated feedback from the implementing agencies as to the problems that they are facing and they can be resolved. So, there should be a working group, there should be some group, we should be implementing it, consisting of all stakeholders. They give back a feedback to the government, because once everything is in place, the results are huge. Huge for economy, huge for environment, huge for job creation, you know, fuel consumption, so many things will take place. So, it has to be chalked out, implementation has to be proper, and I am not too sure that we will see the results very soon, but we should be determined to move ahead and take care of each problem that arises.
We'll talk about job creation and environment in just a bit, but Mr. Malhotra, what Mr. Khattar is saying effectively is that there should be an element of compulsion that should be introduced by the government. Your take on that?
So, you know, compulsion clearly, but whether in a democratic institution you can have compulsion is $1 million question. But the proposal which is there for registration of vehicles after 15 years, and if the costing is about 50,000 rupees, most of the vehicles which have run 15 years, their resale value is not even 50,000. So, effectively, you may own the vehicle, you will have the vehicle in material form, but you can't drive it. So,
you have, I think 20-30% of the vehicles on the road are not registered and not paying any tax.
No.
Let's face it, and across the country in rural areas.
Mr. Khattar,
so there are challenges.
There are challenges, but the point is, now we have introduced the concept of 5 years. 5 years of insurance, which is there for 2-wheelers, 3 years for 4-wheelers. Clearly, the step has to be in that direction, and industry has taken note of it. 2 major corporation auto industry companies have announced scrappage plants already. One has announced 6 months back and one has announced 15 days back. So, industry is also quite serious on it. Otherwise, nobody is going to invest major project if they don't see business in it or they don't see benefit out of it. So, I mean, the task is not easy. But having said that, I believe the change is coming and the change will be visible. Probably you will start with some sort of, I would say, not force, but incentives and disincentives, and if need be, you can have compulsions also, and you can have mandatory also, as Mr. Khattar has been saying, that why not have it? Yes, to have it. If we have the political will, we can have it also, because the benefits, and you've seen the negatives of it. Most of the vehicles which run, their vehicles are scrapped officially, but they're not scrapped. Yeah. Some different engines, old engines are put on it, and they are again running on the roads. And these are the vehicles which cause 10 times more pollution.
Accidents.
So they are accidents, there's no safety in it. So this is, I think, is a multi-pronged approach. There's traffic police, whether it's registration. I know the task is difficult. But having said that, we can doubt the efficacy of it, but the step is in the right direction. And I believe once the momentum builds up, it will gain faster.
Nonetheless,
I'm a strong optimist in this regard.
By the government. But coming back to the steel sector, Mr. Tripathi, the National Steel Policy 2017 envisages production capacity of 300 million ton per annum of steel in India by the year 2030. How will this scrap policy make our steel industry more competitive?
See, a growing economy like India, when we are aspiring to become a $5 trillion economy, steel, cement, these are major movers and shakers of economy. If we are going towards $5 trillion economy, there will be lot of role and lot of requirement of steel, we all know it. Scrap policy will add to the steel productivity, answer could be yes. But those who have handled steel ministry, as sir was saying, okay, scrap to wealth has been a disastrous issue within the steel industry. Today we are talking about waste coming from the user, white good industry or auto industry or others who are generating waste or scrap which can be converted into a raw material partially so that industry can use it. If they are willing to use it, as our other panelist was saying, industry has to come forward to manage and handle the scrap. People have to come forward to surrender their vehicle and other white good steel. There has to be definite the plan of action and incentive visible and otherwise, so that people will come to it. And then industry also need to understand that how we will use that raw material, because the raw material created out of a vehicle 10 kg or 5 kg of steel of my Mazda car cannot go straight away to steel sale India and will start becoming a raw material. There are a lot of processing in between before the scrap becomes usable, either as a collection center or as a user as the steel industry. So it's a complex web of problem. This has a wider ramification, but policy intent is that yes, we want to aid and support the steel industry, we want to support the auto industry who are the major users of it, and other white good industry, and we want to have the change the citizens' behavior by adding value to the scrap. Antique value and social and emotional value for my first car, for my first bicycle are always there. Nobody can take away that from me. But if I get more value for money when I going to buy my next car, and if there is some advantage, I think Indians do understand a price sensitive consumer that we are. We know value for money. Industries may not be that way appreciating global value chain, but our consumers are very conscious. If they get incentive, they will come back. And these are positive incentive. These are positive, what we call it, the behavioral nudge, which will make impact on consumer behavior on the one side, getting better vehicle and better consumer goods item on the other side, plus getting some wealth out of the waste. I think it's a gain-gain, win-win situation for everybody. But government intention, whether we will achieve in full or it requires some more enablers to be put in place, whether industry readiness is there or they need to be nudged little more, all those are work in progress. I hope government must have considered all these things, and I am sure that if there is something yet to be addressed, government is quite open. As the shows that it's a policy watch, we will also watch this policy, how it will actually work on the ground.
Absolutely, sir, and the entire channel has to be activated. But coming to you, Mr. Khattar, the deficit is another problem.
Deficit of?
The deficit of scrap in India. In 2017, there was deficit of 7 million ton, and then we had to import. The cost was around 24,500 crore rupees. How will this policy fix those demand and supply gaps?
You know, it so happens that as in my IAS avatar, I spent 5 years in steel and 15 years in automobiles. So I can tell you both sides of it.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be easy to implement. In India, in these things where you have to scrap and all other things, there has to be an element of compulsion or some amount where he is not penalized, but he has to pay for it. But on Indian roads today, why do you think they have gone for motorcycles to have a 5-year insurance? Because after 1 or 2 years, people don't do it. They don't pay any road tax. They don't do insurance. So, you know, we have to see our culture and our habits and then come with a policy. So you have many things to be plugged in order to make it. But coming back to your question of how to do this, and that is happening, you know, we have a deficit of scrap,
yes,
but it does not mean that scrap is not there. It's being used in different ways. What we are doing now is going to organize it better, and they will be able to do it. Believe me, it is not going to be easy, because I remember when we were in automobile and in steel, scrap dealers were the strongest in the industry, not the producers. Scrap dealers were the strongest, and their lobby is very strong. I mean, even you look at the automobiles, the manner in which you have all sorts of people who are not a part of the system. They are stronger than others. So coming back, I think it will make a difference because now it's being legalized. I suppose as we go along and as we learn, you will also get notifications or rules where it becomes compulsory. You will have centers where the collection will take place, but that is a process which will take time. I mean, sometimes intentions are good and there is no doubt about it. Implementation in a place like India with different cultures, with different states, with the fact that this is a subject which is controlled by center, it's not controlled by the states, and states have their own lobbies. I mean, let's face it. So I think it will be a work in progress, a good start, let me put it. After a long time, it's a good start. The government has shown its intentions, all credit to it. Government has got both the ministries on board, all credit to it. Government has been able to identify, all credit to it. Now, real work starts. Legislation is okay. Administration has to take over.
Absolutely, and you said that intention is there, and Mr. Malhotra said that political will is there. Mr. Malhotra, tell us about the job creation potential of this policy.
So job creation, one clearly is this, not in the short term, but the medium term, it will help enhance the auto market even. So obviously, you have so many job losses in the auto industry and more in the ancillary movement. One is the job creation on that. Then there are new steel units which are being set up everywhere. And these units in a country large like India, across these 28 states and 9 union territories, effectively there will be more locations which will be coming up. So jobs will be generated. The other challenge has been that most of the scrap which is generated, and Mr. Khattar did allude to it, there's a very nexus on it. This scrap doesn't add anything in terms of exchequer taxes to the government. And the scrap is waste. So this scrap, the two things are happening. One, it's coming within the ambit of the economy. And second, this scrap can be effectively utilized for future production. You've got such a large import bill on scrap. So job creation, direct, there'll be some direct benefits clearly, but I believe the indirect benefits will be much larger because the number of vehicles, and especially I'm referring again and again to commercial vehicles, more than passenger vehicles. In passenger vehicles or passenger two-wheelers or four-wheelers, there's a lot of emotional issue. But in commercial vehicles, there's not much of an emotional issue. You can take stronger action. So you can start from commercial vehicles, which run about 60,000 kilometers a year. I mean, they have crossed 10 lakh kilometers. And then come to the next level. So it clearly can be done.
And of course, there are reports that with 7 million ton capacity of steel, 3 lakh jobs are created. But coming to you, Mr. Tripathi, giving you the last word, I have last 30 seconds on the show. Steel is the most recycled product globally, and recycling accounts for 40% of steel production. Any specific lessons for India from countries like Japan, Russia and US?
See, given our per capita income the way we have and a growing size of economy, steel is going to be a major mover and shaker of this economy. I do believe that consumption of steel, reusable steel, converting scrap into steel and making steel more efficient use is going to help the economy in general and is bound to create job in every sector, be it mining, processing, including handling the scrap. Second thing is that the scrap and policy is going to create job for micro, small and medium sector. Because you are aware that government is pursuing a policy of zero effect, zero defect.
Yes.
We should go for zero defect policy, that products should be high quality, but it should be zero effect also, so that we are environmentally responsible. So responsible manufacturing, what we call it triple three bottom line, people, planet and profit, and all those issues of management are also relevant for each industry, steel industry, auto industry, white good industry. They can't say that we will only generate a new product, we will not handle the afterthought of it, like electronic waste, the way it is being handled, single-use plastic now being converted into road. Contractor will not be easily willing to use the plastic as long as they can use the basic